McMorrow, I had about 2 minutes to reflect on the achievements and life of RBG before I was enveloped in despair over what was meant for our country. Sure enough, something like 45 minutes later, I saw Mitch McConnell's statement. Yeah, I mean, I feel badly about that on some level, but I also think that the reality is it was a mistake for her. The choice that she made, I think, was a mistaken one. And I don't not spend the time, celebrating her legacy because of that. This is not a question of a punishment or whether she deserves it or not. This was predictable. This scenario was predictable. In fact, frankly, I'm surprised she made it this far. Actuarially speaking, I'm surprised that Breyer has made it this far. And it was close, right? I mean, it was close. It's really, it's incredibly disturbing. All right, so let's go to get a clear picture on this, right? There's multiple elements that are involved in this in Ginsburg's death. There is the implications of the court 1, 5, 10 years out, 20 years out, 30 years out. I think 30 years out is a safe, maybe 40 years out is a safe time to sort of stop, right? I mean, we have a bunch of 40-year-olds on the court. I think 1 or 2 early 50s. This is, it's going to be a problem for generations. The Supreme Court, it theoretically could stop anything that we talk about on this program in terms of like single-payer healthcare, in terms of taxation, wealth tax, or these can all be stopped by the Supreme Court. There are measures that can be taken. We'll talk about the idea of court packing. We'll talk about the ideas of reform to the courts, but that is trickier to do when you have a Supreme Court that might, in the best case scenario where you have Democrats controlling all 3 branches and they are able to reinvigorate the Voting Rights Act, the Supreme Court could find another problem with it. I mean, there's a whole host of things that reforms, may or may not address. You could see court packing, but and that face I'm looking at is just sort of like, I hate to rely on the Democrats to get bold because that's a little bit of a fool's errand.
No, Biden explicitly said he would not pack the courts.
Well, Lindsey Graham explicitly said, I would not have a confirmation hearing in the last year of an election year. I mean, politicians say things and sometimes circumstances change.
I think it's a little different with Biden and this.
I mean, it might be. I don't know. But circumstances change. Joe Biden doesn't want to get into office and be able to do nothing, but we'll see. The other implications are the short-term ones in terms of like the Affordable Care Act. I mean, there are cases that are going to be heard between now and when the next justice sits. And in the best case scenario for the left-leaning side of the court, John Roberts comes over and votes with them. And even if he does, it's 4-4. So if they're responding to a case that's been decided in a specific way, in a specific circuit court, then that ruling holds. Now, with the ACA, it's a little bit more complicated than that. And then, of course, there are electoral implications. I think I said earlier, at least a quarter of Republican voters voted for Donald Trump because their number one issue was the Supreme Court. Now, that may shift now, but the left has done such a piss poor job of talking about being aware of the relevance of the court, the implications of the court. You see it in the context of how the left did not push Obama to fill the seats that he could have when he was president. You see it in the context of like how much has Donald Trump been able to, put 200 people on the federal judiciary. How much does that come up in the conversations on the left? A little bit, but only because it's so unprecedented. Like it's an amazing record, frankly. Historians will look at this era for decades and say Donald Trump was able to achieve something that no president has ever been able to do. He has fundamentally reshaped the federal judiciary in such a way that it's bat crap crazy. And so, these are all, so it's hard to know what it's going to mean electorally. But let's go to Nancy Pelosi. Let's take the bigger issue first. Is there a way for Democrats to stop the Republicans from seating a Supreme Court justice between now and the election or between now and the inauguration, presuming it's Joe Biden who wins the election? This is the thing you have to keep in mind. This is the calculation. Because if you do something that keeps them from seating the Supreme Court justice and it causes Biden to lose the election, it doesn't matter. But here is Nancy Pelosi asked by George Stephanopoulos on ABC this week. What's the plan?
Time. Of course, you're the Speaker of the House, not a member of the Senate. Is there any way Democrats can slow this nomination down or block it?
Well, as you say, that is a matter for the Senate. But I will say this. It's really important for everyone to get out there and vote. The day that Justice passed away, 10 states started early voting that day. We just want everyone across the country who cares about health care for all Americans, who cares about crushing the coronavirus, who cares about a woman's right to choose, who cares about LGBTQ rights. The list goes on and on to vote. The election is very important. Let me just remind that when we had the Lilly Ledbetter case before the Supreme Court, the court ruled against women in the workplace. Justice Ginsburg wrote the dissent. That dissent became the Lilly Ledbetter law that was the first bill signed by Barack Obama. So the Congress has the ability to overturn the injustices that spring from the Supreme Court. And that's why we have to have a big turnout in this election. Not for politics, not for anything other than what it means to people in their homes, in their lives.
You are in the middle of negotiations over government funding. The government runs out of funding at the end of September. Is there any way you can use leverage in those negotiations to slow this nomination down?
Well, none of us has any interest in shutting down government. That has such a harmful and painful impact on so many people in our country. So I would hope that we can just proceed with that. There is some enthusiasm among some exuberance on the left to say, let's use that. But we're not going to be shutting down government. I do hope, though, that the focus on health care and what it means in terms of the courts will have public opinion be of such magnitude that the Republicans will finally address the coronavirus crisis, finally subscribe to a plan to crush the virus, to listen to scientists about testing, tracing, treatment, mask wearing, sanitation, ventilation, social distancing. Why have we not adopted that as a country? That is a place where we can slow the growth and perhaps crush this virus. Instead, well, I don't want to go into instead. You know what instead.
Yeah. Okay. So there's George Stephanopoulos, exuberant leftist, pointing out that you could actually stop this. And that is, you have a continuing resolution that you have agreed to make a clean resolution with Steve Mnuchin so that the government remains funded. I mean, you see what the problem is here politically, is that the message is a little bit muddled. This is the worst thing that could possibly happen. This is a takeover that's going to implicate us for decades. But I'm not going to shut down I could put it in, but you have to be an exuberant leftist to think that we would want to leverage shutting down the government, because that's only happened, I don't know, half a dozen times in the past 10 years. The government shut down. Maybe that's too many. Maybe it was 4. Like this, it's like shutting down the government is an extreme move, but it's not one that's like unprecedented. It's happened in my 7-year-old's lifetime multiple times.
It's been modeled for us.
And exactly, like we learned it from you, not so much her, but from the politicians. So it is not a wackadoodle, let's, mint the coin solution. I'm referring to the idea of we can mint a platinum coin and pay off the debt. The Treasury can do that. Here's a $1 trillion coin or whatever it is. I happen to think that that's actually okay too. But this idea of shutting down the government to stop something that you say is an egregious assault on sort of our norms that will lead to a fundamentally undemocratic outcome, I think to say that it's the exuberant left is, it's just BS. I mean, it's just BS. Of course it's BS. Let's just leave that, put a stake in that. The other theory is go out and vote. She is betting, and it could be a decent bet, that that Mitch McConnell does not have the votes to do this before the election, that he will only have the votes to do this after the election, but that if Mark Kelly in Arizona is elected, he will get into the Senate early because it's a special election. And that means one less Republican that you need to peel off, and there's a better chance in the lame duck. Now, she doesn't know the vote count in the Senate. So it's quite possible that Mitch McConnell does have the votes, in which case the continuing resolution is the only opportunity to do this. You could bring impeachment hearings against Donald Trump again, or Bill Barr, and that also takes precedence in terms of parliamentary procedure. It takes precedence over everything. The Senate does not have, they have no options there. So you could just eat up the clock that way. I don't know if that works. In the context of going into the election, I don't know if impeachment as a tactic, when you've already sworn it off before the election, is advisable, frankly. The time to do that was, back in January and make a proper impeachment. But I don't know. Shutting down the government, I am not convinced that is an electoral loser in the way that Nancy Pelosi is. Do I understand the concern? Yes, because again, if Biden loses, all of this is moot anyways.
Well, they might as well try.
Well, I mean, the issue is that if you try and it causes Biden to lose, then you're screwed, right? I mean, more screwed than you are if Biden wins and they seat somebody, because then at least you have, okay, now you need to pack the court. But if Biden loses, they're going to seat that person, and then they're going to seat Breyer's seat. And then they're going to replace Thomas with a 40-year-old. And then done. Done.
And I would be surprised if it were a factor in the election. I feel like most people are barely aware of what's going on in the news from day to day, but I don't know. I
mean, shutting down the government? I don't know. I mean, you remember the last one? The last one was broken by the airline stewards, the airline attendants union.
Hell yeah.
And they're, and I imagine they would be aligned with this effort in some respects. But the fact of the matter is that it starts to create pressure on people. Now, the government could shut down, and you could have the president say, okay, the CDC cannot operate. We're not going to get a vaccine. We had a vaccine. We were about to send it out to everybody. We're all going to live our lives normally. Can't do it because the government's been shut down. Nancy Pelosi has kept you from getting a vaccine. That is a reality. Like I'm a little agnostic on that question. That is a reality that they could spin, and it would be not a bad pitch from the Republicans in that case.
Yeah.
Right?
It's all a partisan battle. People are going to vote for who they agree with, regardless of the tactics.
If the answer is that none of it matters, then none of it matters, and it doesn't matter. But I do think, I mean, there is an argument. I'm just looking for a counter argument to that. That people don't react to the government shutting down, and the idea that they don't. If the story is that the vaccine's being prevented from being released because the Democrats are upset about the Supreme Court, I mean, people
don't trust the vaccine if it comes out before Election Day. Democrats don't trust it. Even a lot of Republicans said that they wouldn't trust it in a poll because they know their guy. So,
I mean, the other example is the Kavanaugh hearings. I don't think. I mean, maybe they worked in the immediate midterms, but overall, I don't think they won that, or that was.
No. I don't think the Kavanaugh hearings had an impact in the way that they supposedly did in 2018. Obviously, they didn't. But
I just don't think persuasion is really on the table in a substantial way here. And also the impact of persuasion has been overstated, as we all agree, in elections in general.
It's not persuasion, though. Like, the Supreme Court stuff is more base turnout than persuading, like, undecideds.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not going to cause people to swing from one way to the other.
But I'm suggesting if they shut down the government for, I don't know, 6 weeks. I'm not sure when the continuing resolution has to be passed by. But let's say they shut down the government for 4 weeks. There is no funding, I don't know, for somehow they argue there's no funding for elections, or there's no funding for, for the vaccine, no funding for testing, no funding. And the Democrats.
A spike in that time period, too.
And there's a spike in that time period. I mean, I don't think it's crazy to say that could impact the election.
Yeah,
right?
I know. I just feel like they need to throw everything they've got at this. You have convinced me that the courts matter, Sam.
Listen, I know. It's just that on some level, unfortunately, the ship had sailed. And now as it's like, as we stopped seeing the mast in the, in the horizon, people are going like, hey, wait a second, where are you going? It's like the time to grab the ship was as it was like leaving the dock.
If only I had realized that the courts mattered sooner. No, I mean, I've always understood that the courts matter for these really short-term things. At the same time, I do think that the court needs to be delegitimized in the eyes of the people because it is a system that is 200 years out of date. And I mean, I guess it's good news and bad news, right? Because the accelerationist argument doesn't really hold any water. The court's being delegitimized no matter what any of us do.
I agree with that.